Okay. Hey everyone. This is Stacia, and I'm here with National Master Amogh Tripathi. You may remember him from a couple other videos. and so he actually played a very interesting game the other night against a 2300 National Master named Braeden Hart. Um, Both are local players in Cleveland, and um, well, he's going to share the game with us. So I'm excited to see this one. Braden's a crazy player.
But
and
I mean, you might
yeah.
remember him from one of our videos like a few months ago. So
Oh, right. Oh, I feel bad for Braden now. I'm showing two games where he loses. So Braden, you're going to have to come on my channel as well so we can get a couple
yeah.
of your
Oh no, he
brilliancies.
he has much more beatings against me, so I'd prefer it.
So we'll have to, yeah, give him a chance too. So, all right, let's see this. So, I take it
So
Braden was playing white.
yeah, so Braden was playing
Okay.
white and I was black. For those of you who don't know Braden, he is a wacky player in town. He played in a event in Cincinnati, drew two grandmasters, back to back. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite nerve-wracking to play him, although it's fun to play him nonetheless. So, E4 by Braeden, D6. So, I'm a Caro-kann player. For those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the most boring players in town. So,
Yeah, you say
it's a
that,
nice
but
collision of personalities. 92. So, this is the theory, quote unquote, he plays against me.
I've never seen this move. Like, what is this? Like, what is the idea behind this? Like,
Let me flip the board real quick. All right. We'll see the idea like in two moves. D5, E5. So going for space, right? My knight can't go to F6 now. In the Caro-kann, sometimes I devote the bishop to D6. It closes up this diagonal from B8 to H2.
hmm,
So it's getting slight base, but after C5 and B4, which you like to title as the Caro-kann wing gambit, um, now he's truly fighting for space. Because after I take the pawn on b4, which I did in the game, now I get to d4, cementing this pawn on e5.
hmm,
And I mean, this is it's double edged because he's destroyed me many times and I've destroyed him many times. So, it's fun. So if you're looking for a fun opening to play, you might want to play this against the Caro-kann. Although it's not the most principled. So.
interesting.
Um, yeah, one of the side notes is the best part about playing Braden is that he's always smiling. You know, you look up to him and he's like laughing at you because all the nonsense he plays. So it's always lightning to play him. So e6 at g3. So this is mainly to support f4, f5, and I just continue normal development. Knight c6, bishop e3 by Braeden, so defending the d4 pawn. Plus, the dark square bishop really can't go anywhere, so put it on the best square. Queen a5, so
Interesting.
setting up this X-ray on the king on e1. Now, this is actually some engine prep I've done for Braeden before. And we've had
Oh,
many games go through these lines, and I've actually had very good results with Queen a5. Um, Now, in our previous game, Braeden did some nonsense with a3 takes and bishop takes, opening the a file and putting pressure on the dark square diagonal.
hmm.
But after having a few messy games in that line, Braden's decided to go to this more solid approach with bishop e3. So I've gone to this queen a5 stuff. And okay, he's closing up the X-ray with knight d2,
Interesting.
and then
Okay.
the queen back on b6. So it may seem like a loss of a tempo to go to a5 and then come back to b6. Um, this little maneuver, but I tried to exploit two weaknesses in White's camp, which is this dark square diagonal
Mm-hmm.
and the d4 pawn. Um, so going back a move, something like bishop d2. Then I can go queen b6. And now this pawn is actually not defended at all. And he has to go back to e3 and now a5. And this seems very familiar to our position right here, except I just got like a free move in with a5, and he doesn't have some knight d2. So it's a loss of a tempo.
Okay.
So after queen b6, he went knight f3, so defending the pawn. And now, when you're playing Braeden, you have to get as creative as you possibly can.
So he blocked the f4, f5 idea, though, for now, right?
Right, but again, he's an attacker, and usually I'm going to castle kingside, and he wants this knight g5, queen h5 mess.
Yeah.
More importantly, he wants to defend this, and if he puts a knight on b3, it's kind of on the wrong side if he's going to attack on the king side.
I see.
And I'll kick it out with like a5, a4 next. So
you're playing on the queen side, and he's going to play on the king side.
Mm-hmm. All right. So here, when you play against Braeden, you have to get creative. So I found an idea here, which knight of 3 weekend. So, I mean, if you'd like to pause the video, it's not some fancy sacrifice, but it's a quite cool of an idea. I was actually quite proud of myself over the board. So go for it. Pause the video. All right. Hopefully you were able to find it. If you did, you're better than a national master positional prowess. So here, looking at this dark square diagonal, looking at d4, this d4 pawn is the main thing that's holding white's camp together. And okay, I mean, the knight, if I get a check on this diagonal, the only pieces that can come back to defend are the knight to d2 or the bishop. I mean, a queen on d2, I mean, my bishop takes it, right? So I wanted to get bishop b4 check, but I didn't want to lose a move. Right? Like, I can't take my own pawn. So I go b3.
Nice.
And yeah, this was quite cool. It was the engine's most favorite move. And here, knowing Braeden, he never accepts gifts of free material. He only gives gifts. So he went c3. So the diagonal's closed, right? And as well as the d4 pawn is well cemented. So previously we were trying to get to the base of white's camp, which is this d4 pawn. But now it's the c3 pawn.
Okay.
Now, how do we get to the c3 pawn? Well, I mean, queen a5, just bishop d2, right? The queen isn't great at making threats because, I mean, it moves in all directions, but, it's quite easily, the queen's threats are quite easily defendable. Right. So having this pattern of the rook and pawn on the same diagonal, it was some pattern recognition here. And I went bishop a3 and another move that I was actually quite proud of. And we both were shaking here because none of us knew what was going on. He was looking at me and with his, little grin. I was kind of nervous that he has something up his sleeve, but then I also knew like my position was good. So we were quite configured. Now there's actually quite a few lines here, which I had to calculate. I lost about like 6 minutes of clock time here. The most critical is queen takes b3. Oops. Queen takes b3.
Okay.
And what happens after this? Bishop b2. And is that c3 pawn really significant enough to make this a good enough endgame? Especially with the rook coming back to the a file to pressure your a7 pawn. White's pieces are way more superior than mine are. Is that extra pawn enough, or does white have enough compensation? So, material advantages aren't always like cut and clear. Of course, there was AB3, but this one was a bit more straightforward because bishop B2, he has to go like bishop D2 and then queen B4 stuff. Here, I knew I had to be, I had to have the advantage. because, I mean, I'm just suppressing and he doesn't have any counterplay.
Huh.
Now,
Okay.
there was a real cool line here, which both of us were, chit-chatting about in, Skittles room. And we got, like, yelled at by my dad because we were making too much noise because we were too excited about this line. But yes, there was this move, Rook B1, which at first sight, I mean, it seems quite cool, Pin the B pawn to the queen. Looks like a free pawn now. There's no bishop B2 stuff coming. But actually, I'd encourage you again to pause the video and see if you can find the move here, because it's actually quite cool. And I mean, that's the main move I was afraid of, Rook B1. But after finding this move, I was really happy with myself. So if you'd like to pause the video.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it was this real messy line, which if you were able to find, congrats. I mean, if you weren't able to find it, no worries, because it took like 4 minutes of clock time for me to find it. So after Rook B1, I have this move, B takes 8-2. Like, who cares about queens at this point?
Okay.
So after Rook B6, A B6, my bishop's coming to B2, and I'm queening.
Wow.
And I'll just be up a rook in like 2 moves.
Wow. Okay.
And there's like no scenario, like for example, queen A1, I have bishop B2 stuff. And remember, I'm up a rook right now for a queen, so I can queen. Oops. And I'll be up exchange here.
That's a
and now
wild
white's deprived of all counterplay. So yeah, this was quite cool. And we in the Skittles room, we both looked at each other. Did you see this line with Rook B1? Oh yeah, BA2, and then I take the queen, and then you promote next move. Oh my god! We had so many what's that called? So many epiphanies. It was hilarious.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Okay, so Braeden did what he's best at doing. He decided to sack material. So he took on B3. And I had bishop B2 prepped for this.
Oh, okay.
And he figured that if he's gonna attack me on the king side, he doesn't need a rook. So he went bishop D2.
Okay.
And okay, I mean, we were both
it.
laughing at that point, but so takes bishop D7. So I can take on B3 here, but as we noted in our little post-game analysis, queen B3, even though it wins a pawn, bishop D3, and I'm actually down a tempo now, or he's won back a tempo, because next move he'll castle, and then he puts a rook on D8. So for example, if we just go through some moves, now here I have to be careful. If I go like bishop D7, rook B1 traps the queen, or almost.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
For which I have to spend a tempo moving my queen back. Oops. And then after the rook comes to B1, I have to come back, and now he gets C4 stuff, D5 stuff. And when you're playing Braeden, there's always enough threats. So I decided I wasn't gonna take the B3 pawn yet. In fact, I thought I was gonna wait for the perfect time. So I played bishop D7, and my idea was to go knight A5, and then take with the knight on B3. That way I can exchange like a bishop too. And I told her in the post game that the main thing going through my mind was to deprive Braeden of as many toys as I can, because he's like too good with his toys.
That's so mean. You're gonna take the toys away from the kid.
I mean, at least he's not crying, so it's good.
He's not crying yet.
I have a little brother at home, so trust me. Yeah, but knight A5, and then suppose he goes like bishop D3, and now knight takes B3, and then queen A2. I take the bishop. He takes back. Now he's we've exchanged a pair of pieces, and I've won this pawn, and I haven't lost the tempo. Now things are looking really good for me. Although the only problem with knight a5 was b4, and now if I go with this knight b3 idea to exchange pieces, then he has a fork with queen a4 check.
Ah, yes, he does. Okay.
And, the king, the knight, both are hit, one's falling, and suddenly he's got two pieces for the rook and advantage win. So, I thought that he isn't making any current threats, so why not just defend against the b4, queen a4 idea? So I went bishop d7. And after bishop d3, now I had this similar idea. Now knight a5 works. Because b4, knight b3, there isn't any queen a4 because my bishop, is on that diagonal, which was the main point of bishop d7. All right, but here I decided that I was willing to risk it, and I took with the queen immediately. More or less, I wasn't worried too much about him castling and bringing the rook to b1. I thought that my material advantage should be enough. Although, again, he did what Braeden does best, and he was able to squeeze some, water out of the stone. So he castled, and queen b6. And here, it was getting quite slippery. Not in the means that he had something, although I had to be very careful because, there were ideas of like knight h5 combined with like knight g7. Oops.
Yeah, this is very brave of you, isn't it? I mean, I see your a pawn looks like a beast, but like rook b1, it looks like he's going to now get initiative, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, there's like knight h5 with knight g7 ideas. There's queen a3 stuff to cut off my king from this diagonal. And then there's like bishop to h6 stuff, rook to b1 stuff. I mean, there's so much that can happen, but with precise play, I think I should be able to limit most of this. Just to show what I was saying. Knight h5. Okay, suppose I play some inaccurate move like knight g7. Now we have some lethal stuff. King f8 and bishop h6. And this x-ray is almost decisive. I have to go to g1 to get out of it, but now queen c1. And now his queen's coming to g5, knight's moving out, and it's checkmate, checkmate. Yeah. And that's stuff I had to be afraid of. And on the other hand, if I do something like king f8, now he has queen a3 stuff, which doesn't work at the moment. But now you can combine stuff like this, and bishop h6, which is what I was most worried of. And Braeden's like, super talented in finding tactics. So like I knew I had to be, on my toes if I wanted to hold this for a win.
Wow.
So here the engine's top move is rook b1, getting all that counterplay on the queen side. But Braeden unfortunately did not see it, and he played queen b1, which might be a bit too impatient, as he's looking for like knight g5, queen f3, possibly queen f5 stuff, or queen h5 stuff. But yeah, now the game gets real fun. So
really?
So I went oh yeah. So I went well, not for me, for him. But still, I was able to win it. But it gets real fun for like spectating. So I went g6. The knight came to g5. So he's taking advantage of my awful dark squares. And note that now I've traded off my dark colored bishop. He can, pounce on this f6, h6, g5 triangle. So I go h6, making sure I want his pieces as back as I can. But then he goes for this real cool idea. Knight f7.
He's sad. Oh, you gotta love Braeden.
And okay, I mean, like, I never decline sacks. Well, unless they're like main too. But like, other than that, I never decline sacks. So I took on f7, and he went queen f3. Now, king g7 is automatic death, because queen g4 and knight h5 and knight f6 stuff. So I figured I had to stay in the center. King e7, rook b1. Wow. And here I had to choose between queen c7 and queen a5. If I go queen c7, which seems like the more, the safer approach, now he has c4 stuff possible. And if I take on c4, possibly d5 and like d6 stuff. He also has bishop b4 threats. I mean, it doesn't look great here. He gets counterplay. And the e5 pawn isn't really hanging because I go check, and okay, I mean, where does the king go? King e8. Then there's like bishop takes g6. Is there? Man, there's no bishop takes g6. All right, but a simple move like queen e4. A simple move like queen e4. And now you're exporting the knight to the e6 pawn. And maybe you can take on d3. But it's looking very oh, yeah, you can't take on d3 because of d6. And then the knight's hanging next move.
Oh, yeah, interference.
So it gets shaky. And with time scrambles, he's like 2,300 blitz. I'm only 1,600 blitz. So I'd prefer to stay out of time scrambles. So I played queen a5 in the game. And the main point of this is to not allow like bishop b4 stuff, and especially c4, now that the bishop is pinned to the queen, or the pawn's pinned to the bishop by the queen. And, it looks kind of dangerous to put your queen in X-ray. But again, sometimes you just have to have your calculation override. So here he goes rook takes b7.
I was wondering if you would do that.
Oh yeah, so it was more of like a pawn sack. Whoa, no. See? We don't spoil. Okay. Queen a5. He takes. I went rook b8. So, my process of thinking here was deprive Braeden of his many toys. And okay, I just got a rook off the board. So now I just need to get like one of these minor pieces and I'll be fine. So he took on g6. And after bishop e8, it's actually quite ironic that all the key squares that the queen can enter through are covered by black pieces. Like queen f6, which seems like a lethal check, is blocked by the knight. Queen f7, which seems like super good, is blocked by the bishop. And like something like bishop g5 is blocked by the pawn. And knight f5 is blocked by the pawn. It was quite hilarious.
Yeah, and like your pieces are on the back row too, and they're still working.
Oh, yeah, they're on the back row. Who says you need to develop? So he went queen d3, and this is I think where he slipped. Since I here went bishop b5. And the idea is simple. If he moves the queen, then it's just simple mate. Just check. If the bishop comes back to b1, I'll take it. c1, I'll take it. Queen comes to d1, I'll take it. And then eventually when he puts the knight on f1, my bishop defends f1.
Yeah, you can take that too.
And then I take that with mate, right? Versus in a non-bishop b5 era, so like queen here, check. Now knight f1, and there isn't a bishop on b5 to take the knight on f1. So yeah, I mean just flying bishop b5, and then he went c4. Pretty much any other move puts him on defensive end, and Braeden hates being defensive. So yeah, he goes for c4, but this just loses on the spot now because of queen a1 check. And okay, he had to go queen b1 here, or queen f1, to hold his chances, and go into an endgame where he's down an exchange and a few pawns. But okay, he went knight f1, and now his bishop takes c4, and he has to go like queen b1 here to not get mated. But he does the funny stuff. He goes check, I go to d7. He goes check, I go to c8. And I don't take it because then he gets queen g6 stuff, and I didn't have enough time to calculate, so he wanted to go bishop d7 here, but then like he wasn't in the mood for it, so he went queen h7. And then he was laughing at this point. I almost took the queen, but I just decided to go for straightforward mate instead. Never know what Braeden has up his sleeve. But yes, here on move 29. It was checkmate, but it was a funny game to play.
Wow, I am shocked too. Like, if this end position is like, your rook's still here, your knight's still here. This
Oh yeah,
knight went out and
I
then
played
was
a
like,
game of
just
like
kidding.
three.
Yeah, wow. I
All the
guess
pieces
this,
are like out of sorts.
yeah, this is modern chess.
I was talking to like another master, and I asked him if he saw my game, and he was like, "Oh, was that your game? I thought the board screwed up, and I just put up some random position on the board." So
It does look
it
like that.
was yeah. So
Wow. Wow, what an interesting game. There's a lot of calculation. I have to say, the thing I was most impressed with is when you decided, I mean, this is something I feel like I would never do, because I'd be too scared. Like when you decided to just grab this pawn and like allow Braeden to like castle and play rook b1, like I would have been terrified. So you must have you must have calculated a lot of that stuff, right? Like
yeah, I
or
mean, it
were
was
you
mostly just like the ideas that I thought would deprive him of counterplay.
so you,
Like I thought G6 would take away H5 and F5, and I thought that if I could bring my queen back in time to C7, Bishop E8 stuff, or C8, I thought I could defend F7 adequately, and I thought there shouldn't be much danger, although there was still a bunch of danger.
wow.
Um,
You're like a way
but
better defender than me, clearly. Well,
oh,
'cause I don't think I would come up with these ideas. Like G6 looks scary to play because it weakens your dark squares, but then, and I don't want all my pieces on the back row. So, like, I don't think I have enough of an intuition to, like, understand that this might be okay. But clearly, you saw this position. You were like, yeah, I think I can defend. I mean, that's how it
yeah, I
went.
mean it's scary. Yeah, I mean it
Especially
was
against
it
Braden,
was
who loves to attack and is super creative. I'd be like, I'm going to miss one thing and get mated. Like, that's what I would be thinking. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. So you masters, you're like you're confident. You're confident. You knew that you could defend this.
And like you have to believe. So and
I
this
believe
night of
I'll lose on
stuff.
time. I believe that.
Time. It was like a minute and 50 seconds for me to like 40 for him.
Oh,
So
really?
it was a slight time scramble, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel when he took on F7 where you're like, "Oh boy."
So oh yeah, of course I was oh boy for like the first 10 seconds. But after Queen F3, and I saw all this devastation on the king side if I go to G7. And the only other squares I really had were E8 and E7. In the event of going to E8, I hang G6. So I thought after King F7, King E7, I might be able to do like some immortal Bobby Fischer King Rock or something and be okay. And it just happened to be that my king could land on C8 at the end. So it was, yeah, I mean, I thought I could just run away with the king, to be honest. That was the only thing going through my mind. So
Yeah, and I guess you ended up mating him, which is kind of ironic. I thought for sure these pawns are going to come to tell at the end, but maybe Braden knew that, so he was just going all in on attacking.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much. What a cool game. Once again, I apologize to Braden for showing two losses. I don't like doing that, but on the other hand, that means you have to come on for a video too. So,
Oh, yeah, I mean, all right, more than happily come on for a video, but please, like, let's not show any of my games. Um, yeah, I'm positive you've had like much cooler games.
I
So,
know that Braden, like you said, two draws against Grandmasters, but I'm pretty
oh no,
sure he got a
he beat
win against one of them,
he
right?
beat one of them,
Yeah, he beat
and
one
he
of
drew
them,
the other.
and the Brian Smith game
He
looked
was supposed to
super
win that one.
interesting. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I walked over to the board when I was playing, and
Mhm.
I just saw Braden's pieces like swarming around Brian's king, and Brian was looking really nervous, which I've never seen him look before. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, I just was like, oh my gosh, I think Braden's winning. Um,
Yeah. And
and
apparently
then
he was like mine. He was +7 or something if he found the
wow,
right move. But it was a very difficult move that I didn't find either. In his win against the other GM, I walked up and his pieces were swarming like the GM's king, right? So I thought, okay, it's a typical Braeden attack, but like the GM has some plans up his sleeve and Braden's gonna lose this. And then like Braeden starts packing up, so I walk over. I'm like, "How'd you do?" Like with the thumb thingy, and he goes, And I was like, oh, you share it? Like you didn't mean to do like thumbs down? And you're like, yeah, thumbs up. I was like, oh my.
Yeah, impressive. Like just so disrespectful too. He's like, "You're a GM, I don't care, I'm just throwing my pieces at you and I don't care."
It's quite cool. It's ironic that his openings are like -2 for the opponent, and then it's so hard to hold. So
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm fascinated that he can get away with that, like even against
oh yeah, Bill
grandmasters.
Wright.
Yeah.
Bill Wright said something which I still remember. It's like I've seen so many people play with this wacky style, but none of them have hit master. So I mean,
Yeah, and he
yeah,
hit 2300, not just master, but 2300. So clearly it's working for him. It's pretty
yeah.
pretty interesting. So, all right, I'll end the video here, but thanks, Amog. I'm sure you'll have more awesome games to show us, and good luck in the coming year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all. Good luck and thank you.
Thanks.